leadership looks different depending on where you sit, whether it be the boardroom, the pulpit, the classroom, or the coaching office. But the principles, they're often the same. So join us. Between the two of us, Jesse and Dave, we have decades of experience across business, ministry, consulting, and organizational development. And we will explore leadership theory and reality through the lens of real practice. You'll get sharp analysis paired with warm relatability, serious insights without the corporate pretense, and frameworks you can actually use. So whether you're leading a Fortune 500 company, a nonprofit, a church, or just yourself, this is the conversation you've been looking for. I'm Jesse Ennis. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing great, and I'm Dave Zutlow. So glad to be here today.
Grateful to have you. And so before we jump into the meat of today's podcast, this is our inaugural podcast. So let's introduce ourselves to the people. How about you tell us about yourself and your experience in leadership?
I spent 30 years in corporate America, 10 years as a human resource executive, 10 years as a lean manufacturing executive, and 10 years running some global manufacturing companies. Also, 15 years in teaching leadership and human resources. Also, I have experience teaching at several different universities, including University of New Haven, Penn State Barron, Indiana Wesleyan, and Indiana University. My experience took me around the world, and I've certainly worked with different leadership teams and different thoughts during that period of time. I have a master's in labor relations from Michigan State and also an economics degree from there.
Fantastic. So I'm looking forward to learning all that I can from all that experience that you have and the conversations that we're about to have. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Jesse Ennis. I am currently the associate pastor at St. Stephen United Methodist Church. I've been in pastoral ministry for almost a decade now. Graduate of UNC Charlotte and a graduate of Duke Divinity School. And I've been blessed to spend a lot of time in different leadership circles, especially the leadership development team of the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church and other spaces as well. And so I am grateful to be on this journey with you, Dave, so that I can continue to learn from your wisdom and your experience, because I consider myself a student of life, if you will, learning all that I can from folks of different generations and learning all that I can from the experiences that we live in every day. And so I'm excited that this podcast can be an opportunity for us to learn together, myself and our listeners. So we encourage you to participate with us. You can participate through our Discord channel, where we will continue the conversation. We also encourage you to participate in the comment section wherever you are listening with us as well. So let's learn together, let's grow together, and let's make this journey fun. So to introduce our topic today, Dave, if you will, could you briefly explain the core idea behind behavioral theory of leadership and how it differs from earlier leadership theories like trait theory, for example?
I sure can. I think one of the things before I start is it's really exciting for Jesse and I to be using leadership theories, past and present, in order to talk about what's happening in organizations today. But if we go back in history, basically modern leadership theory started after World War II in the 50s. There were a lot of studies. The United States was spending a lot of money on it. Prior to that, people thought leaders were born either by right of who they were, what their ancestry was, what their charisma was. Basically, you were born a leader. It was really challenging to become a leader if you weren't born into it. Obviously, World War II, particularly the way the Americans fought, the Industrial Revolution that came out of it, the thousands of GIs that went to college started to show that people had an opportunity to grow in skill sets regarding leadership. So behaviors moved us from what people had inside of them and knew inherently to what you could learn, and basically focusing on what are the behaviors of a leader, thinking that if we know how to effectively lead people through managing these behaviors, we can start forming patterns in which people were developed into leadership. So it's really an opportunity in a lot of ways for people to learn leadership, things like checking in on people, being able to form communication, two-way communications. These became behavioral types of ideas.
I love that. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with, where we came from. Does that have anything to do with just this idea that as human beings, we tell stories. And when we tell stories of these heroes who who are born with these traits, whether or not they fully realize them, who are kind of born with these traits that make them the heroes of different stories. I wonder how much that has to play into kind of where we came from. And then the learning is that, we all have opportunities to learn and to grow into being great leaders. It's just sometimes we need to understand where the gaps are, and sometimes we need to know what to try. It's not that we don't know how to do it; it's just that we don't know the value of it until somebody explains it to us. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, this idea of learning leadership traits. There are multiple now theories of leadership. There are multiple ways that people display leadership. As an example, one of the key aspects of behavioral theory was to start to repeat patterns. A culture
Mm,
would develop certain things they want to emphasize. Leaders would go through the routine each day. Uh, the idea that became that um, people could start to um, manifest some of the things that natural born leaders came into play. It didn't have to be Alexander the Great, in
mhm.
order born into those natural types of things. You could start to learn them. And in doing that, the organization, the senior leadership, if you will, could not have more middle managers, which was really the key to modern leadership theory and the success in the 60s and 70s and 80s in the United States.
Mm. That's really cool. I think I kind of fell into a similar pattern of thinking, if I can just get that routine just right, you know what I mean? Like if I can just do the right things at the right time and do them consistently over time, then I could be a much more effective human being. I can be much more efficient in the things that I'm doing, and I can grow over time in that. So I somehow, I guess through, you know, education and environment, I kind of kind of found myself believing a lot of those things.
Well, you're
So
definitely a product, Jesse, of advanced leadership theory, being as young as you are, right? I'm really curious. What leaders really have resonated with you? And would you say they were born to lead, or rather they developed it through mission, through what they were taught, the people they were around, people they were mentored by? How would you kind of characterize that in your career?
yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's a combination. There are some leaders who I admire, who I've had the opportunity to actually get to know, and it wasn't until it wasn't until maybe my late 20s, early 30s that I started to be bold enough to ask folks like, hey, can we sit down and have some coffee so that I can hear from you like what your influences are, instead of just assuming. Because I think I did a lot of that. I did a lot of just assuming that these people were gifted, and that they, you know, they were gifted in how they were, and so um I just kind of admired them for who they were, not necessarily thinking um, that I could be a successful leader like them. Later on, that shift started to happen where I thought, the best way for me to get to know, um, to get to grow in myself is for me to get to know some of these leaders, and a lot of these leaders are willing to sit down and have a conversation with you. So I kind of grew into that idea. A lot of my leaders, a lot of the folks who I considered to be, heroes, if you will, are either professors or pastors, sometimes both. I think one of the more recent examples that I've had was an Old Testament professor who I admired from Duke Divinity School, Colin Cornell. And after just a week of his class, I thought, I gotta sit down with this guy. I gotta find out, like, how did he get to where he was, and had a really good conversation with him. Realized that this is something that he had been working on for a really, really long time, and so him and I were coming to the study of Old Testament from two different places. He had kind of grown up in these spaces, but had some really cool opportunities to kind of learn Hebrew at a younger age, but then also live in Israel for a time. And so I kind of recognized that it wasn't just how great he was as a person, but there were some work that was already being done from his adolescence to where he was. And so, he's only a few years older than I was, but all those years of experience and being immersed in Hebrew culture and things like that, it started to become more and more evident how he had become as successful as he was. So yeah, I think for me, it has been a journey of moving from, you know, looking up to this pastor, or maybe looking up to this tech giant, if you will, like Steve Jobs and these other folks, and thinking, oh man, like they're just larger than life folks, right? But then kind of doing some more deep dives, and so for some folks, they're popular enough that they'll make a movie about him. So Steve Jobs, for example, they made a movie about him, and then you can watch and, of course, take with a grain of salt. Take what you will from those movies, but also it does kind of show much more of a human trajectory than the ideas that I have in my mind about how easy it is for these folks to climb the ladder, when it's not often a linear process for a lot of folks, and so yeah, my thinking about that has changed over time.
You really raised a great point, Jesse. Let me ask you one more question. Behavioral theory would say that what these leaders do is more important than who they are, in the
Mm,
sense of in order to be a leader, you need to have some positive skills, right? You need to be
mm,
able to talk to people, to communicate, rather than just a charisma type of environment.
mm,
Um, and you mentioned, I think this is another interesting item about leadership is we often look to the super successful ones, right?
yeah.
And we're drawn to that. For every successful one, there are multitudes that are mediocre leaders or even negative leaders. I'm really curious how you think organizations, right, or senior leadership in organizations
Hmm.
can use things like culture. How do we talk to our employees? How do we respect our employees? That they train their leaders on in order to not have that negative impact of a person that's a negative person or a negative leader. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think I think a lot of these theories, just going back a little bit, these theories don't necessarily work in isolation. So, for example, if we're looking at behavioral theory, it's not just behavioral theory that makes you successful. I think there's a very there's a very human element that's a part of these theories, and I think it all, to me, it all kind of starts with the human, right? And so um, I think we can use behavioral theory to grow our teams, but I think it's also very much important for us to get to know and to build relationship with the folks on our teams as well. And so you can have, quote unquote, a mediocre team, or mediocre individuals on your team, but those individuals collectively, I believe, can make a major impact if they are able to work well with each other, to be vulnerable enough um, to share shortcomings and to share celebrations with one another, to have a unified goal and to have passion behind that goal. And I think if they have enough time, um, and if they kind of hold each other accountable over time, I think that even individuals we might consider to be mediocre can accomplish great things if they participate in the right teams. Um, and so, another, I'm glad you brought that point up about folks that are mediocre. I think a lot of folks kind of see that in a binary, that you're either an extraordinary individual or you're not. And I don't believe that to be true. If we're going back to those movies, one of the reasons why you can have a successful movie for someone like Steve Jobs, or I think the founder of, I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but the founder of Facebook also had a movie, is because the relationship dynamics that happened over their lives as well, that they did not get to who they were on their own. And there were relationships there. Now they might have become the face of those relationships and the face of those companies, but there were people with them along for the ride. People who, sometimes those relationships didn't work out really well, and it makes for really good drama, and it makes for an engaging movie. But I think there are a lot of folks who support the leaders that we consider to be those extraordinary leaders. I don't think they got to that place on their own. There's a lot of very valuable um, there's a lot of very valuable so-called mediocre people that are a part of their journey to get them to where they are.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the interesting things about leadership theory, and there's multiple leadership theories, as an example, some of the leadership theories would say that the team you mentioned is only as good as its weakest link. In other words,
Yeah.
the weakest link is what holds the team back. And there's other theory that says each of us was born with strength. And if
Mhm.
we're all born with strengths, it's the job of the leader basically is to manage the team in order to make every one of the team members effective.
Mhm.
So there are different kinds of ways of looking at it, which is one of the challenges of leadership, right? So one
Yeah.
of the cores of leadership, and everywhere, and today we're talking about behavioral leadership, is you want to develop a culture. You want to develop a way of doing things as an organization, whether that is in the team unit or whether that is in a division unit or a broad company unit. And they do that in a variety of ways that we can talk about if we're interested, or our people are going to join us in the conversation are. Today, though, I want to really talk about the fact that one of the things that happens over time when you've developed this positive culture, um,
Mhm.
and you have this team functioning like you just talked about, you're looking to get everybody working, you're bringing up members, you're using their strengths. The challenge is routines oftentimes start to be, or behaviors that you're doing every time because it's expected, start to become routine. In other
Mhm.
words, it's not important. It's like
Mhm.
active listening. We all know that you're supposed to ask open-ended questions, and you're
Mhm.
supposed to receive the information, process the information, ask a clarifying question, And why do leaders not always do that? Well, they don't do it because it's time consuming, right?
Yep.
And also they may think that and usually there's a sense of urgency, right, with a delivery. There's a something to be done. There's a performance issue. There's a quality crisis. There's a dysfunction within the organization. So I think one of the key um, takeaways I would hope from our conversation today to think about and leaders to think about is how do you keep your culture relevant? How do you
Mm,
keep it dynamic? How do you make sure it changes with the time? All in the same context that you talked earlier so wisely about is everyone is, you talked about human beings are part of this culture. Absolutely. And what is true about human beings? Everyone is different.
yes.
Everyone has different set of personalities, different set of genetics, different backgrounds, different needs, different, in our case, ages, right?
Yeah.
Um, and all those types of things come into play for a in a leadership situation, whether it's at the team level or it's at the corporate level. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I couldn't agree more. And I would even say that it starts on an individual level. So when we're talking about our routines that get kind of boring over time, I was thinking about some routines that I have personally. And I have my checklists that renew every week, and I go through them, and I'm looking at them sometimes, and I'm like, why did I even add this to the list? I was really fired up about adding this to the list previously, but over time it's gotten really boring, and I can only imagine how much more that happens when you're on a team of people. One person starts to check out. We're human beings, it happens. One person gets to the task and they start to check out, and then either you have someone on the team who is high energy and able to rally everyone, or over time, more and more people start to check out, and more people start to question, why are we even doing this? And then it becomes a chore, and not an opportunity for us to use our gifts and to grow, and to move closer to our overall goals together. And I've worked in a lot of different capacities, um, a lot of different companies, and you see it all the time. You see, some folks who at some point have gotten to the point where they're just here because they're supposed to be. We're just doing this because we were told to do this, because we get paid to do this, and we want to still get paid. So we're here, you know? And so I'm excited for us to kind of get into, how can we avoid falling into this performative trap where it's just we're doing these things, we're going through the motions, we're going through the processes, but we no longer believe in these processes. And for a large portion of it, we're spending most of our week at a company where doing things where we just don't know why, and we don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I love that. It's so interesting hearing a millennial talk about work. And checking out and attention, right? Because it does make a difference who you are, how you feel the value of that meeting is, if is an example. One of the more interesting things you said was you gave us a solution. You said what we should do is get somebody who can fire things up, can get things done. So what I would do is as a person who sells products, leadership products to you, is I would teach you facilitation skills, right? And I
Mm,
would also talk about when do you assign responsibilities. I might give you two or three skill sets and how to deal with that.
hmm
And it would be more effective. You would have to take those things into account. But interestingly, one of the things that will happen is over time, that leader will get tired of doing that, right?
mm,
So they will start doing it themselves. They will start shifting the load to the ones that are interested.
hmm
So perhaps a different kind of leadership might be that is counsel the people that are not being productive and find out from them how they want to be productive. People in general, a vast majority, I'd say almost everyone wants to contribute. However,
Hmm.
some people are misplaced culturally, right? So in
Yeah.
that case, you might not have them sit in that meeting. Rather, you might have that person do something routine, something they can really contribute to the situation.
Hmm.
My point is that you need dynamic changes, even where you've done a great job there identifying what the problem is, and also what a solution is. It doesn't mean you shouldn't stop looking for solutions, right?
Mm.
And that's really where the merely a theory came into play, right? Yes, we have responses to that. We can do it with all generations, all education groups. Some again, some people don't have the skill set to do that, but you can train the skill sets. You
Hmm.
still have a challenge, though, is when do you do that? What do you do? And more importantly, how do you sustain that over a period of time?
Hmm.
And that gets back to where these long-term teams where people are coming and going. Are they finite teams? Those are all factors too that hopefully we'll have fun over the next few months talking about.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it because in my mind, it's more these teams kind of operate more like a human body does, where there are a lot of different things happening, a lot of complex things that are happening, and then for example, if one of these complex systems isn't working as efficiently as it should, then it starts to burden other systems as well. And so I'm looking forward to, our conversations as we aim to tackle these individual issues and look for healthier solutions, but also just kind of recognizing that it's all a part of a larger system. So we're talking about behavioral theory today, but it's also all a part of a larger system, and that system looks differently. Like we've said, every human being is different for all types of reasons: DNA, background, hopes and dreams, all these types of things, and that's very much the same for different organizations, regardless of how big your team is. A lot of those different systemic things are happening. So, we're having a conversation today about behavioral theory. I'm coming from the perspective of a pastor. Dave, you're coming from your perspective as well. And our listeners are coming from their own perspective. And so I hope what folks are hearing is that there is not a one size fits all. There's not going to be one episode that solves all of your problems. There's not going to be this podcast alone isn't going to solve all of your problems. This is an opportunity for us to collectively enter into conversations, and to grow as a community of folks, not just two individuals on a podcast telling people what to do. So, yeah, I'm excited for where this conversation is going to go.
You raised a great point too, Jesse, that I want to point out is so you've selected a leader, right? You've given him a set of skills, right? Also, he or she is intelligent, brings something to the party. You've given them the skills. You have a positive culture, and even there, though, you have a situation where people outside of work may have a problem, right? They
Hmm.
may have a drinking problem. They may have family problems. They may have money problems. They may have, whatever the children might be struggling. They might have daycare problems. So this leader that you have all these good skills in, right? Soft and hard skills, know the business, makes decisions, good facilitation skills. Oh, we forgot one, counseling skills,
Hmm.
empathy, right? And how do you switch that hat on and off? Or do you switch it off? Or do you find other systems or other ways that you can support that leader? And particularly now, we haven't even really brought up technology today, right?
Yeah.
You don't even, in my day, ancient times ago, I used to be able to visit the people, right?
Hmm.
And I would travel to plants and I would visit it out in the factory. I would visit in my conference room and I had my team together in general, right?
Hmm.
Today we have our team all over the place. So the connectivity is more. right? In other
Yes.
words, we see each other Zoom wise in technology. However, do we still understand that that person, that Jesse in was somewhere else remote, he's dealing with all this stuff. That's why his performance is down,
Yeah.
right? So in some ways, in many ways, technology is very positive and allows communication. And in some ways, because of that, though, we've lost some personal touch, human being to human being. So I
Yeah.
think that's a real challenge today too. That I'd love to hear the listeners' point of view, and I'm sure we'll be talking about every week. How do we do these leadership things in a virtual world, right?
Hmm.
And part of that is the news cycle, obviously, is on bring them back to work. A couple of years ago was send them out everywhere. We don't need office buildings.
Yeah.
And that's all about this struggle of leadership, right? Of how do you maintain that continuity of things?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up. As you said, we're at the point where I would imagine that most businesses are at the point where they're saying, we need our folks back at work. We need our folks back in the building. We've got some family friends who bought a house under the expectation that it was going to be remote work from here on out. And then come to find out, oh no, we moved 45 minutes away from the office because we didn't think we needed to go to the office as often anymore. And now we're back to going there Monday through Friday. I will say, living through that, in terms of getting the my tasks done and my checklists checked, it was great. But as we've mentioned, it's, moving towards our goals as a team is about a lot more than just checklists. And life happens, and there's a lot of ups and downs. And so yeah, we're gonna have to be able to navigate both of those spaces. There are going to be times where we might need to leave the office so that we can be a lot more efficient. There's going to be times where we have to realize that we need to get back into the office because humans are humans and we need that human interaction as well. So yeah, I'm excited about hearing all the different ways that people are interacting with this conversation, and how they're jumping into the conversation too, and where they're at, and how they are seeing these different theories work out in their lives as well.
The sorry, one more thing about the
Yeah.
geography and technology is that it's going to be critical. And if you think about AI, which we haven't mentioned, which has to be a new first in our conversations, right? But
Yeah.
it's really going to drive a whole new set of leadership characteristics, right?
Yes.
So the just taking the discussion of geography and where you are in relation to each other. Um, why would Jesse and Dave need to be together when half of their work is being done by their agents, right? Their AI
Hmm.
agents.
Hmm.
What does that look like? I mean, would I send my AI agent to hang out with your AI agent? I know we
Yeah.
laugh, but it certainly seems like it might make sense, right? Because I
Yeah.
might have an AI agent that's specialized in a specific point of view, and then
Hmm.
it returns, right? So,
Hmm.
what is that change of the interaction between Jesse and Dave? Because leadership theory is all about human to human right now, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And probably for the foreseeable 2 years, whatever is foreseeable these days at the
Yeah.
rapid
Exactly.
change,
Exactly.
it's going to continue to be that way. But as we look at it, though, people that are part of the reason people came back was people were having too much fun being remote, right?
Mm.
They could sit in on a call over a martini, which, as long as they're doing their job, I guess is okay, or cutting their grass or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So I think that's part of it. Now, the other hand, virtual work has advantages too, because you can hire the best, right?
Yes,
If
that's absolutely.
we're both in Charlotte, so we basically have the Charlotte area to hire or move people into. If
Hmm.
we're virtual, we have the United States, we have really even the world,
The
right?
world.
Where
Yeah.
we could pick the best human being to do our job.
Hmm.
So there are real advantages to being virtual. So as with all leadership theory and business theory, what's going to happen is people are going to find whatever leverages their business to be the best at and give
Yeah.
them a marketable advantage.
Yeah, and like you said, we've briefly touched on technology, even though we've spoken a little bit about AI. That's the technology of the day. Who's to say that, like you said, in 2 years, because it feels like technology is doubling a lot faster than it was even just 5 years ago. Who's to say that there won't be a new addition to technology that we're going to have to consider, layered on top of AI, layered on top of remote access and remote work, layered on top of, all these other things of us being human and things like that. And so, yeah, it's a real complex world out there. And what I hope is that does not sound intimidating to our listeners. I hope that sounds like an exciting way to move forward. There's so many opportunities for our work, and the ways that we strive towards our goals to not be monotonous, but there's so many opportunities for us um, to work towards achieving different things, and living life in the process of that, recognizing that we won't be able to look at everything with rose-colored glasses, like, oh, all I need to do is add AI and everything is going to be great. Well, no, that's not exactly how it works. But also, we don't have to look at it with this doom and gloom of like AI will take over everything either, because life is just so complex, and being a leader is so complex that there's going to need to be different solutions for different things. And so I hope you hear this as an opportunity to grow, and to live dynamic leadership, instead of a doom and gloom kind of thing. So that.
Well, I would say too, being as more advanced in age than you are, would I say I've been through a lot of technology changes. When
Mm,
I went to college and was a physics major and taking differential equations, I did my first year of the slide rule. And then
mm,
the TI-20 came out, which is just a calculator with some
yeah.
functions on it. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It had to be the best. And then
Yeah.
the computer, and then, I mean, just one thing after the phone. I mean, it's an exciting time. And as leaders, we need to find a way to meld that
Mm,
technology with leadership skills, with corporate cultures, with how do we make decisions? How do we allow others to make decisions? Where's the best decision point? Even today, what are the decision points? And integrate technology into that for sure. It's an incredibly exciting time,
yeah.
Jesse, to your point, and I certainly think it's going to be a lot of fun and exciting, and hopefully this podcast and community that might listen to it and might want to engage will talk about and participate in these
Yeah.
theories. And by the
Yeah.
way, this gives us a great idea for after our merely a theory series, we can talk about the effects on society. But
Yeah.
that's for a different future because it does it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a
It
lot of
is.
fun.
Thanks for joining the Theory to Thriving podcast. If you made it this far in the video, continue the conversation with us. You can join our free to join Discord, or you can just leave us a comment. We'll see you soon.